Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about synth sounds again, but I want to take a little bit of a different approach. I am not going to show you any particular synth sound, but I'm more going to focus on the actual MIDI pattern that is playing the synth sound, and we'll have a few reference tracks and we'll see if there's some characteristics that we can spot, maybe some things they all have in common, and we'll see what that's all about. Before we dive into that, I do want to thank everybody for the support the last few days. There's been a huge influx of subscribers, which is always nice to see. Obviously, a lot of you came from Desk Glitch, which is where I had the little discussion with. If you haven't seen that, you should definitely check it out on his channel. But I think most of you have seen that video, and a lot of you actually came from that video to subscribe to my channel. So that's very nice. And I want to welcome everybody here. But without further ado, let's get right into the video. Alright, so we have 4 reference tracks which we're going to check. We have Spiral of Colors by Outsiders, we have Trippin' Out by Menok and Burning Noise, we have Spark by Cosmic Tone, and we have Lost in Space by Kalki. And links for all of these tracks will be in the description if you want to check them out. But that being said, I'm going to play first the reference track, and then I'll play the rhythm of like one of the elements, or like maybe the percussions. In this case, it's the percussions. And we'll talk a little bit about them. So here's the first one, just the reference. So here it's a little bit hard to see which notes they're being played because of the filter cutoff being very used and the bandpass filter. But I tried the best to recreate the rhythm and the kind of the feeling of the melody. So this is what I came up with. So what I want you to take notice is that there's a kind of speed going on. We have a very slow start, as in this part sounds very slow. If we compare that to what the second is doing, that's a lot faster, as well as here. So you, for this rhythm, what I want to take away from it is how it's using kind of speed as a way to kind of carry the melody. So we're going from a fairly slow part at the start to a faster part at the end here, and then we go back to a slow down part and we're going faster again here. So that's something you might be able to experiment with in your own rhythms. Normally what people tend to do is they take one rhythm, let's say this one, and they'll just stick to it and just like copy it over like this, and then maybe change some of the notes, maybe add 1 or 2 extra notes in between there to get a bit of variation, but they generally tend to stick to the same bass rhythm, and therefore it doesn't have a lot of involvement in terms of how it goes faster or slower. And as you can see, this is a very good case of where that is actually done pretty well, and I think it's a very interesting technique used to kind of create a little bit more liveliness in your rhythm for this particular synth sound. So let's move on to the next one, where we also have a cool trick, and that is to just not have it in some parts, just to turn it off. So this is Trippin' Out by Burning Noise and Menok, and it sounds like this. So you can hear the main kind of vocally sounding lead sits only mostly in the first bar, and then 1 or 2 kicks, and there's not a lot going on in these last 2. The main part of the rhythm sits in the first and the third bar. So it sounds like this here. That's kind of the rhythm that it's playing. And this little bit of silence is not only a good way to add an extra cool effect or something like that. Here at the end, he has that like reverb tail and the delay coming in. But here there's a different sound altogether. But it's also a good way to kind of reset the listener. So always when you have this long starting note at the start of a bar, it resets the listener's ears, and it will, sync them up with the beat a little bit better. And having a rhythm that's 1 bar, on and then 1 bar off, is also another way to emphasize your structure a little bit more and make your structure a little bit more understandable to the listener, instead of just having random notes play throughout the whole 2-bar part, you'll have it switching kind of on and off, so people know exactly where the bar changes. And that's a good way to make your track structure and your overall rhythm of the track a little bit more clear to the listener, which is obviously very important. So the next one is a little bit more a percussive sound, so it's a little bit hard to hear the rhythm at first, but we'll play it like this, and then we'll take a look at the rhythm as well. So this is what we have here in terms of rhythm. So here it's kind of cool. What's kind of happening with the rhythm is that it sounds like it starts playing from here. Like if we loop this part, that kind of sounds like the way it would loop. This sounds like the starting point, whereas it's actually starting on kind of like the offbeat later. So the whole rhythm part is kind of shifted an eighth note. Like if you would place it here, you can see it lines up a lot nicer with the grid as well. So you generally want to have stuff on the beat, and generally want to have stuff on like the first. So and what we talked about before, to emphasize that first beat so that people kind of reset and they can, you know, feel the groove of the track a little bit better. But here actually what he's doing is he's deliberately not having something on the first of every beat, but just on the first of every 4 bars, or maybe even 8. I just have a 4-bar segment here, so I don't really know. But at least he has like 1 here at the start, and then he doesn't do that for all the other ones, which kind of creates this cool kind of tension vibe almost, and it works really well. So that's what I want you to take away from that, and that's going to be what we're going to talk about for this one. And then for the final one, we'll listen to Kalki in Lost in Space, and we're going to focus on the acid sound here. So it's a little bit hard to hear what the acid sound is doing. That's mainly because there's a lot of other elements in front of it. But it's a nice art nonetheless. And what I want to focus on here for this one is just continuity, which means that it's just continuously playing, and we always have a note playing, as you can see in the actual velocity here. Every 16th note is being used inside of this sequence that we have. And that creates this continuous vibe and a very fast kind of vibe to it. As I said, I don't really know if that's the exact same notes that are being played. But still, the idea is kind of there. And if we actually turn off these lower notes, you can hear that it's kind of losing some of the vibe that it had before. You could even just have these lower notes in there and then set up a velocity. We're using Serum for this one. So we'll set up a velocity volume on this saw wave here, and then just turn the velocity down so it's kind of mixed in there. You still have your main melody on top doing its thing, and then you have these supporting notes kind of filling up the space and adding that little bit of speed that we talked about. So that's the final thing I want to give you away. This is not really a rhythm, of course. This is just 16 notes, but the rhythm still sits in that you're switching between octaves, and that kind of gives it a vibe of rhythm. You could say that the main rhythm is 2 notes, a little pause, 2 notes, a little pause, 1 note and another pause. And then for the second one, it's 2 notes, pause, 2 notes, pause, and 2 notes. And repeating that for every bar would work, but adding this in there really helps, glue it all together and stuff like that. So that's going to be it for today's video. It's a little bit of a different approach to what I normally do. Normally I tend to focus a little bit more on the sound design, but I think this is also very important to know about. So if you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you're new, subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.